Yesterday we discussed this subject of Kilesa Bhumi and Panya Bhumi. As with this saying, not being mindful about the aggregates, that is mind-body aggregates, they become Kilesa land, or the land in which, or the soil in which Kilesa grows. And if one is mindful of these aggregates, that is mind-body aggregates, they will become Panya Bhumi, wisdom land, or the soil in which wisdom grows, together with other things which should be known to you. So the subject we discussed, in a sense, was two things: Kilesa Bhumi, how Kilesa Bhumi and Panya Bhumi arise. So Bhumi literally means land, where there are both animate and inanimate things live. There is only one Bhumi. The land is only one. So also we use this word as a metaphor for this mind-body aggregate, Nama Rupa Khandas, as Bhumi. Now if one is not mindful of the mind-body aggregate, to know the realities with the practice of mindfulness, then there will arise many unskillful states, beginning with ignorance, not knowing in the wrong way. Besides, liking agreeable things or craving for agreeable things, and aversion for disagreeable things. One of them is bound to arise. As for moha, the third unwholesome root, delusion, bewilderment, confusion, lack of clarity, this unwholesome mental state, moha, arises every time when one is not mindful and aware of the realities. Because one is not mindful with the practice of Satipatthana, one becomes thick with ignorance, like a forest. This ignorance will grow like a forest. Not only just simple unknowing, but also this craving, aversion, and other unskillful mental states, defilements such as conceit, envy, avarice, and many other things. Hence it is said that not being mindful of one's mind-body aggregate, kilesas are bound to grow. The land, it becomes kilesa land, the soil in which kilesa grows. Now the yogis are practicing this way of mindfulness so that there's no kilesas. Kilesas do not arise in the stream of consciousness because their mind is protected by mindfulness, sati, so that their mind is serene, collected, knowing the realities of mind-body aggregate. That is beginning with the discernment of mind and body in stages of insight knowledge, beginning with the discernment of mind, body, the causal mode, and the interlocking triple characteristics, beginning with the arising and passing away of conditioned psychophysical phenomena, that these things which change, which are in a state of flux, are fearful, they are unsatisfactory, and that they are uncontrollable, they arise at their will, They are selfless, soulless, and without essence, without essential core, abiding core. And in this way, one is bound to see the knowledge in stages. Also seeing what is known as sabhava lakkhana, that is individual or unique characteristic, leading to the knowledge of common characteristics or universal characteristics known as samminya lakkhana. So here there are two kinds of characteristics, lakkhanas. Sabhava lakkhana, that is individual, unique, specific characteristic. And the other one is samminya lakkhana, common or universal characteristics. This is the beginning of insight knowledge. Until one reaches the maturity of the insight knowledge, ripening the insight knowledge, being awakened to Panya, the path and the fruit of its liberation. So in this way, it is said that if one is mindful, one mindful of the mind-body aggregates, these mind-body aggregates will become Panya Bhumi, the soil in which wisdom grows or wisdom land. Like when you own a plot of land, if you make good use of it by growing useful plants, you're going to harvest good things like fruits, flowers and so on. Otherwise, if you leave this plot of land as it is, weeds only will grow. They're useless. So the wise will make use of this land to good advantage in order to harvest fruits and things like that. As for the indolent, they will only harvest, or they will not harvest, they will only get these useless plants which cause trouble, which are harmful plants. So understanding this, we make good use of our khanda, which is a land, like a land, metaphorically, to make good use of by planting these seeds of the sublime Dhamma, the three trainings, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, in order to be able to harvest useful fruits, flowers and so on. You are here to grow all these plants, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, in order to harvest the fruits of wisdom, and therefore you are like gardeners or farmers. So we are to practice this way of mindfulness at the moment of the arising of this mind-body continuously, so as to let this wisdom grow in our land. Vipassana Panya. Now Vipassana means various characteristics in many ways, characteristics in many ways. And Pasana means seeing things in a variety of characteristics. That is the meaning of Vipassana. And Panya is the wisdom of seeing things in a variety of characteristics, such as the three interlocking universal characteristics, the characteristic of impermanence, the characteristic of unsatisfactoriness, and the characteristic of selflessness. These are the three things which make up the variety of characteristics. So pasati means seeing. So in this way, this kind of Panya wisdom does not arise through conceptualization, through thoughts, or hearsay, or from books, they arise from empirical knowledge. That is true knowledge, the real knowledge, known as Samadhi, the right understanding or right view. So understanding the three interlocking universal characteristics, first of the conditioned psychophysical phenomena is seeing rightly, right view, right understanding. Now as for the beginners who have come here, they have not yet cultivated this Vipassana Samadhi as yet. Right understanding of insight as yet. So not even, they are only in possession of, they are only in the stage of Sila Visuddhi, purification by virtue, or they have to come to the stage only of moral purity, Sila Visuddhi. Still not yet to the stage of Vipassana Samadhi. So we have to grow this seed of Vipassana Samadhi at this stage. So the yogis are now sowing the Vipassana seeds. As for those, the experienced meditators, they already know this subject. They have sown this Vipassana Samadhi, only to nurture this and make yourself gardeners. Now when we talk about gardeners or farmers, first after you have sown the seed, you need to protect and nurture these seedlings so that they don't get spoiled. We must nurture them, we must protect them, guard them as good gardeners and good farmers. Only then we are bound to reap the fruit, get the harvest in the form of Vipassana Samadhi, so that this right understanding of insight will be alive, giving rise to fruits and flowers in the form of harvesting Megaphala fruits, part and the fruit of its liberation, which will be harvested. And in this regard, as gardeners and farmers, you are given these 5 methods of nurturing the seedlings as given by the Buddha. Namely, first of all, Sila Nugahita, protection or nurturing with virtue, morality, Sila. The second method of nurturing or protection is Sutta Nugahita, nurturing or protection with learning. Number 3, Sagecha Nugahita, nurturing with discussion. And fourthly, Samatha Nugahita, protection or nurturing with tranquility practice, to be free from hindrances to progress, nivaranas. And then finally we have this Vipassana Nugahita, protection or nurturing with powerful insight knowledge. So these are the 5 ways to nurture the seedlings. Today we shall discuss this subject, and the yogis can gauge their fulfillment, to what extent they are fulfilled with these 5 ways of nurturing. If they are complete with these 5 ways, then we should be glad about it, we should rejoice over it. So we are sowing the seed of Vipassana Samadhi, so we can judge by ourselves. If we are not fulfilled with this as yet, we can fill up the needs, the gaps of what we have not fulfilled, so that we can protect this Vipassana insight seedling day by day, so as to be able to harvest good results from this seedling. This is as much as the Buddha preached, and no more. In those days, the listeners, the audience, gave preference, priority to the Dhamma, cherishing and appreciating the Dhamma, and they are easily convinced when Buddha preached in this way. Not now. In those days, the audience had faith both in the Buddha and the Dhamma and their own practice, that their practice is not to degrade them, to degenerate them, but to uplift them. So they have full faith in this uplifting Dhamma without remainder. So therefore, no need to awaken Saddha purposely, because they already have faith in the Buddha and the Dhamma, especially the practice that they are undertaking. When in these times change in due course, in later eras. When Dhamma is preached, they are not easily convinced of the essence of the Dhamma because of lack of saddha and chanda, lack of faith and the will or zeal to undertake the practice. So they are not easily convinced. Hence the commentarians, the elders who wrote the commentaries, had to give this metaphor or compare this with the gardener, how the method of nurturing the mango plant, mango sapling in his or her garden in 5 ways, the 5 functions that he or she has to perform in order to nurture or protect this mango seedling. So this is very noteworthy for the yogis and also very useful in actual practice. Here the comparison is made between the gardener planting this mango seed and nurturing mango seedling with practicing yogis who are practicing to sow the seed of Vipassana Samadhi, right understanding of insight. So the gardener begins to sow the seed, and the yogi begins to undertake the practice to cultivate this Vipassana Samadhi, right understanding of insight. Now first of all, what the gardener has to do is build a fence around his garden so as to be safe from intrusion by animals and other beings who may tread over the seedling or the seeds, so that it is worth building a fence around it. Now, in this connection, when this center was first established, there was no fence at all. It was just bare land, so that intruders came in and took away or cut bamboo and other trees. Now when the fence was built, there was much relief. There was no more intrusion. So all the trees were saved. Now, as for the mango seed or seedling, the garden needs to be fenced so as to be free from intrusion. So too with the yogis, they need to sustain their sila with conscious commitment, so as not to weaken it, not to get this precept rendered or become weak. So that otherwise this Vipassana seed of insight, the sapling of insight, the seed of insight, may dry up and die. So you need to nurture your practice with precepts, conscious commitment to virtue, so as to keep this insight sapling or seed alive. So understanding this, we need to sustain our precepts, committed to the vows of precepts consciously. As for monks, they have their own rule of conduct, and as for lay people, the precepts that they are to sustain, not to break it, otherwise the practice will be disrupted. So in this way one can purify one's morality, and by doing so we are said to be nurturing this sapling of insight. This is like erecting a fence around the garden. So first of all, this is the method of the way of nurturing the sapling of insight. Nowadays, in modern times, people don't take much notice or much priority to conscious commitment to virtue, sila. So sila becomes weak, and they just leave it, they neglect it. Actually, the morality the conscious commitment is very crucial foundation for the advancement of the Vipassana practice. If we break it or weaken it, then we won't harvest any fruit, any benefit out of it. The practice will not bear any fruit. Like the trees, if the branches of the trees are broken, or they are weak, or they're getting old, then it is not possible for the fruit to be harvested, or the flowers to be harvested. So too with sila, morality. If it's weak or broken, then it is not possible to continue to strengthen the practice. Hence, it is necessary to nurture one sapling of insight with morality in order to keep this Vipassana Samadhi alive. Furthermore, the gardener needs to water the plants after he or she has sown the seed to keep the sapling and the small plants or plants alive. If not, they can dry up and die. On the other hand, if you water too much, it will be harmful. So we have to be moderate, the middle way. So too with the yogis, they need to listen to suitable Dhamma at suitable times or occasionally, so as to not the Satipatthana related Dhamma, not otherwise. Hence the teachers are duty bound to give talks relating to Satipatthana in order to inspire your practice, so that you can occasionally listen and be convinced and be inspired, listening to this inspiring talks, which you'll be able to support your own practice. This is known as Sutta Nughita, nurturing or protection with learning or listening, by teaching, by giving talks and listening. In this way, one nurtures the sapling of insight. Hence, the teachers give talks lasting 1 hour, sometimes an hour and a half, in order to nurture the sapling of insight. This is the second way of nurturing. Listening to the appropriate talks is very conducive if you know how to listen with good motive, paying attention, cherishing the Dhamma, appreciating it. If you have not heard this, you can hear it and understand it. If you have already heard it, you can listen again and become more inspired. You can understand better. So that you can rid yourself of these doubts and uncertainties. And if you have certain distorted, wrong views, then by listening to the talks, you can rectify your views. And when you have certain experience in your practice, and if this experience checks up or is an agreement with the talks, what is given in the talks, then you should rejoice. So it is beneficial to listen to the talk with interest. In this way, you can purify your mind. As I said, by listening to the talk, the Dhamma is good in the beginning. So if you do it with good motive, it is very conducive. Then the real motive should be to be free from defilements. So by listening to the suitable talk, you can nurture your sapling of insight. And also there's one thing, when you listen to the talk, there may be things that you are not quite clear, and you can pose questions, with good motives, then they will be explained by the teachers. Otherwise, you just begin to practice and you have many questions already. So if you listen to the talk looking for questions, then only questions will arise, not understanding the essence of the talk. The third method of the gardener to nurture his or her mango plantation is to keep it safe. First, erect the fence so as not to be destroyed, and then to water the plant so as to make it grow. But if one does not feed these plants with necessary things like fertilizers, either natural or artificial fertilizers, or work the land, if the soil is very hard, the roots may not be able to grow, may not be able to move out, or may move very slowly. So if the roots also come to the surface and need to be covered with soil, with the earth, then we have to work the earth suitably. So only then this tree, the simple sapling, will be alive and will grow. So too with the yogis. In the practice, they need to report their observations and experiences to the teachers at appointed times of interviews. How many hours they sit, how many hours they walk, and whether they report their work, that is the noting of their objects, beginning with the predetermined object, and the quality of the mindfulness, that is whether they can do it, follow it closely and things like that, can sustain it, and if not, what happened. So in this way, they have to report their observations and experiences to the teachers. Well, there are some people who cannot name their experiences or the observations, so they can also discuss with the teachers. So all these difficult problems can be explained and understood at the daily interviews, while reporting one's experiences and observations. It is quite simple. What you look and what you see, and what are the things that you observe, then the teachers will be able to help you if you report short to the point. So if you are able to do that, reporting in this way systematically and the teachers explaining to you, then your doubts will be cleared and you'll be able to proceed with your practice. So this kind of situation is known as Sakecha Nukheda, nurturing your insight with a discussion, by discussing your observations and experiences with the teachers. By sustaining one's mindfulness and cultivating deepening concentration, beginning with the mindfulness of the primary object and the exertion of energy, so as to prevent the insects and pests from attacking and not to miss the object. Deepening the concentration, in this case Kanika Samadhi, momentary concentration, to let Kanika Samadhi arise. With the exertion of energy, viriya, kilesas are not accepted, and by not accepting they are said to be overcome. And with the activation of mindfulness, kilesas are not allowed to enter your stream of consciousness. They are, in this way also, they are prevented. So that when concentration arises, the mind falls calm and collected, so that there will be no distraction, no scattering of the mind, and no remorse and things like that. That is samatha, tranquility of the mind, because the hindrances to progress which undermine the practice, concentration, are said to be subdued or tranquilized. So in this way, nirvana's hindrances, beginning with the sense desire hindrances, are prevented, so as to cultivate this viriya sati samadhi continuously. If, however, there is no concentration, no samatha, no tranquility of the mind, you are bound to be attacked by these nirvana insects, beginning with sense desire hindrances, craving for agreeable, desirable objects, or aversion about disagreeable, undesirable objects, ill will, vyavara, nivarana. And then in your practice you may be slack, not being able to exert energy, and even if you initiate your energy, very soon you get exhausted, you get burned out, so that you become restless and feeling remorse, leading to doubts about yourself, about your practice, and about things related to the practice, like being attacked by the pests and insects and weeds. One by one they will come and attack and destroy this sapling of insight. So as not to be attacked and destroyed by these pests, insects and weeds, we practice this, activate mindfulness in order to tranquilize the mind with samatha, protecting. This is the way of protecting, nurturing the sapling of insight with tranquility tranquilization or tranquility practice, samatha, nogahida. If you exert energy in order to sustain your mindfulness with alertness, diligence, you are bound to cultivate this mindfulness and deepen your concentration. But occasionally, because of slackness in the exertion of energy, the mindfulness may not be activated enough, so that concentration also is not deepened, is weak, in which occasion the nirvana hindrances are bound to enter one by one. So when they enter, what are you going to do? Like preventing, of course if you can prevent it, so much the better. But once the plant is attacked by pests and weeds and insects, one has got to deal with them, remove these pests and weeds by suitable means. So too, in the practice, you prevent nirvanas from arising, but if at all they arise due to your weakened effort, you have to note them. Like when you're craving or desirable objects, you can notice craving, wanting. When you have aversion about disagreeable objects, you can say aversion, not wanting, disliking, anger or whatever, ill will. And if you are sluggish, getting bored, getting lazy, you can notice lazy. And if you feel remorseful, just note as such. And if you're restless, note as restless. And if you're doubtful, note as such. And by this way, you can overcome, because you're experienced in noting these objects away. In this way, you can rid your mind of these nirvana insects. As far as Sayadaw says, he can only give methods how to prevent these nirvana insects from arising, from attacking, and if at all they attack, if you are attacked by these nirvana insects, how to remove them with mindfulness in accordance with the Buddha's teachings. And it is up to the yogis to practice these things, prevention and cure and treatment. So, with mindfulness, if they are not mindful, of course, the nirvana insects are bound to attack. So that for some yogis, because they are attacked by these nirvana insects, they become discouraged, disheartened, and they are preparing to run away, some of them, packing up to run away. Now, because they have been used to this comfortable life, they cannot bear these strict disciplines anymore. They got burned out. Of course, can't be helped. All he wants to say is to be patient. Patience leads to nirvana, and persevere, have perseverance, and with which you can subdue these nirvana insects. Once you have subdued them, overcome them, then you become happy, because seeing these sapling of insight growing well, growing green, you will be happy with your own sapling of insight. So, he would like to ask such people question, that those people who are backing up, if the majority of the people are able to bear these strict disciplines and continue with their practice, why not me? Why not I? So I am a healthy man or woman, so I should be able to carry on. That sort of thing. In a sense, so these nirvanas, hindrances, are like these weeds which can gradually overwhelm this plant, in this case the sapling of insight. So we need to remove them, otherwise they will take over, and then the useful plant, the sapling, will die off. So too with the, in this case, in the forest technology, there is this expression of pruning and felling, removing the unwanted plants, so that the sunlight can enter these useful plants, removing the creepers, unwanted creepers, cobwebs and things like that, so that the sapling can grow freely. Here in this center also, previously, there are useful plants, but they are overwhelmed and they are so stunted by these, the growth is stunted by these creepers and weeds and cobwebs and things like that. So after they have been removed, these plants grow freely and it's now good to look at. So also with the nivaranas, they should be prevented by mindfulness, and if at all they arise, then they should be noted off. This kind of method of nurturing is samatha nughita, nurturing the sapling of insight with samatha. In this, in an agricultural technology, there's this expression called thinning. That is when the many plants are growing in the same place, it is exhausting the soil, the value of the soil. So what they have to do is they have to remove some of the unwanted plants, not so important plants, or they grow these plants at some distance, so that the sapling, required sapling can grow freely. So too with the practice, the yogis should not give priority to insignificant, less important, meritorious deeds. So what is important is to activate mindfulness with the exertion of energy in order to deepen the concentration. To practice the constant and consistent mindfulness. That should be the priority. Then only one is bound to realize the goal. This also can be included under samatha nughita, the nurturing of the sapling of insight with samatha. In a sense, it goes without saying that the main thing is to be able to sustain one's mindfulness with proper targeting and exertion of energy every second of the time. And there's no other thing to be done. This is the only thing that should be done. So with the practice of this nurturing of insight, one is bound to gain insight, beginning with the discernment of mind and body and their causal mode, and this beginning of insight knowledge by comprehending the interlocking characteristic of existence. Especially at the stage of the fleeting momentary nature of experience, one is bound to see the illuminations, experience the illuminations, piti-pasati, joy and tranquility. And at that stage, the pleasure that you can gain out of the practice excels manifold the worldly pleasures, sensual pleasures. But of course, one thing to note, one reminder is, if one is attached to this pleasure, Dhamma delight, then there may be no progress. One has got to know them off and then continue to progress. Only then one is bound to realize the actual benefit of the practice. So, just like the gardener has to remove the cobwebs which entangle the plants to stunt the growth of these plants, so by removing things like these cobwebs, one can let these sapling grow freely. Then one is bound to realize this unique experience results, like bearing the fruit. So also, instead of being attached to this insignificant Dhamma delight, pleasure of the practice, and not progressing by being attached in a subtle way, one should continue to progress so that just like the mango tree or mango fruit is in its green stage, it is when it is not ripe, it is sour. Even when it is ripe, it should be fully ripe, free of insects and worms. Then every bite will be delicious, sweet and cool. That is just like progressing to higher insight knowledge, where you can experience the real fruit of the practice. Because Vipassana, this is Vipassana Nogita, nurturing with the strong insight, powerful insight knowledge, by progressing through, advancing through the progressive levels of insight knowledge until we realize the fruit. So in this way, giving these analogies of mango plantation, by nurturing the Sapling of insight with sila, morality, conscious commitment to virtue, listening to the Dhamma as and when necessary, the good Dhamma which can inspire you, a discussion with the teachers and interviews about your experiences and observations, and deepening your insight with the activation of mindfulness, preventing the insects from arising, nirvana insects from arising, and if at all you are attacked by these nirvana insects, remove them by knocking them off. And lastly, the nurturing of insight, something of insight with strong insight knowledge, higher insight knowledge, so as to be able to bear fruit in terms of the path and fruition knowledge of the noble ones. That's all. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That's all. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That's all. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That's all.